Welcome to the Queer Love Podcast, the silly and serious shenanigans of two queer relationship coaches. I am your host, Elizabeth Cunningham.
And I'm your host, Lee Greeps.
On this podcast, we talk about how to live your best queer life with fulfilling, healthy relationships and anything else that makes your little queer heart happy. Because living your life outside of the heteronormative scripts is totally possible for you.
Each episode, we explore all things queer love from our professional perspective as relationship coaches, our own personal experiences, and as partners.
If you love our show, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter at Queer Love Relationships. You can also check out our website, www.queerloverelationships.com.
Thanks for following us and enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Queer Love Podcast.
Woo! Ding, 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 ding. Gotta try out the bell.
Mm-hmm. Yep. For Mama C.
Mama C. She's like, no, I legitimately have a bell, not make the sounds of a bell.
Yeah. Yes, dear listeners, my mom suggested that we have a bell. And I am at my mom's house right now and she has a bell, but I refused the bell.
Well, I was still trying it out. I do what our producer asks,
What are we talking about today?
Things are gonna change in relationships, so deal with it. What was a nice way of putting it? Acknowledging unrealistic something.
Unrealistic expectations. Acknowledging where
Unrealistic.
you have unrealistic expectations.
That's a nice way of putting it.
That's the nice way to put it. Things are gonna change, so deal with it.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Don't.
Except for what we're gonna be
Hmm.
talking about is that you don't have to deal with it. You can be flexible and adapt
Or
instead.
you could try that too.
Or you could try that, you know.
Your
Maybe,
options.
maybe you are the type of person who has just been trying to deal with the change. That
White
is
knuckle.
white knuckling it. That's right. Just like that something happened in the relationship, maybe you opened it up, maybe someone came out, maybe, there's so many things that could change in relationships. Or like, you had to move to a new place because of one person's job, or, you lost a friend or whatever. There's so many things that cause changes in
Change.
relationships. And you can get upset about that, which is totally valid.
I was like, dang, she's gonna take that option off the table, be like,
No, you can totally be upset about that. And also, you can learn how to move and flow and adapt and be flexible without, compromising who you are, without compromising your values, and one of the things that we mentioned before we turned on the recording was like revisiting agreements too.
hmm.
Like, who you were at the beginning of the relationship, who you each were at the beginning of the relationship is probably not exactly the same as who you are now. So, even if something drastic hasn't happened, it's also good to revisit
But also,
expectations.
uh, yeah, and I mean, I think I was thinking about it too in the sense of, when it comes to like long-term relationships,
Hmm.
you kind of I mean, it's like anything, you get used to how things are going, right? Like it's like in a
Right.
job that you've been at for years and years, like you just get used to it so that when something changes, like whether it's a large or like a small enough change where it's like it just kind of throws it off enough that you start to go into like freak out mode. But then it's also not even like actually just being with, oh wait, like who am I now? Like what's changed for me or what's changed for me and like, you know, the different context of life at that stage, to where it's like, oh yeah, like we do actually need to change agreements, or we do need to do this differently, or talk about this differently, or whatever it is. And you know, it's okay for that to happen. It's not like like you said, you're not going to like sacrifice yourself or, you know, things of that nature. Because I think that's just like what can catch us off guard with things, and when things change, is that it's like, oh no, but now it's not going to be how we used to do it. And it's like, yeah, but how you used to do it is from 10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and I think that one of the things to acknowledge in the conversation of change in relationships is how we deal with change,
Mhm,
and specifically how you deal with change when it involves when it impacts someone that you really love. Because if you are an avoidant person, then you might try to avoid this change or avoid talking about it, or skirt around the issue or not address it. And that can make the change a lot harder too.
mhm,
Or if you're a more anxious person, then maybe you catastrophize the change, and there's all these stories in your head about how terrible it's going to be, and so then you brace for impact.
mhm,
Or like you start operating like those stories in your head are true, so maybe you create drama around the change that is unnecessary and not even real, because you are so anxious about
mhm,
it. And I think those are some of the things that I see when, people come to me or come to us and talk about things that are changing in their because, oftentimes that's when people seek help and like seek coaching. Um,
right.
is they're like, this thing is happening and I don't want it to happen, or this thing is happening and I need help to navigate it or move
Right.
through it or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's often
Or this
like,
thing's about to happen. And yeah.
right, or it's about to happen, or it happened 6 months ago and it's still terrible, or it happened 2 years ago and it's still terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever the case may be. And so I feel like we see this a lot in coaching, is how people navigate change in unhelpful ways. And this is not to like point fingers at anyone. Like we all have the ways in which we try to navigate things. And so this is no judgment, no value judgment on anyone.
Mhm.
We all have ways that we do things that are helpful, and we all have ways that we do things that are unhelpful. And that's what learning is about. And
And that is, my friends, is learning.
and there you go. That's learning. But but I see a lot of I see a lot of like the avoidant behavior,
Mhm,
but I also see a lot of like the creating drama
mhm,
behavior. And I don't mean creating drama like you're intentionally creating drama. Like I don't mean like reality TV show creating drama.
could
That's
be sometimes.
Although some people do that, but that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. Like, I'm more talking about, like, again, you have these anxious thoughts, you have stories that you make up, you have ways that things have happened in the past that now you're like, oh, well, since it happened this way in the past, therefore it's going to happen this way, you know, today. And so I need to manage that when it's not the reality of what's happening. And when you're not dealing with the reality, you are most likely creating drama.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think it's also just, I mean, what you're talking about is like, comes back to like nervous system work when change is present, right? Where it's like you run for the hills or avoid, or like you get more into that anxious space, or maybe just like freeze up and you're like, what? You know, it's, yeah, it's just like, and also knowing that, you know, different changes are going to impact you in different ways, especially as time goes on. It's like, yeah, you know, maybe if this had happened 5 years ago, you would have been a lot more like, you know, secure about it or grounded about it, because, you know, life was just a little bit more smooth for you in at that point in time. And then now it's like, no, this change cannot happen. Getting super anxious, start making up like all the things that are going to now be worse off because of this possible change or this change that is happening. And
Mhm.
then, you know, from that, but it's, you know, it's that recognition of, like you said, like if you're not being with what's happening, like if you're not being in the reality of a situation, whether that's because you are getting into that more like future tripping kind of experience, or you're just avoiding it, which means you're not being with the reality of the
Yeah.
situation. Like either which way, you're still not being with the reality of the situation. And if you're not in that space, then you're also not able to address what needs to be addressed. Like if, agreements need to be changed, or if, you need to talk about different boundaries, or you need to communicate something specific about a need for yours, that is, being impacted in this way, right? Because it's like, yeah, if you're not in that space where you can actually look at what needs to be talked on, it's like then this change is going to seem even, yeah, scarier, or more of an obstacle, rather than being like, okay, yeah, this change sucks for sure, Z's. Like for sure, like be upset about it. That's fine, like be upset, whatever it is. And also it's like, okay, does this work in the ways that we've been, you know, doing stuff, as it pertains to this, whatever the change is impacting, does it work for how we're doing it? No, we need to change all this, which means that's you being with what's actually happening and not
Yeah.
going off into la la land about it.
Yeah, and I think one way to be with what is reality
Mm,
is looking at it like you would if it were like a courtroom.
mm,
Like what are like the observable facts of
yeah,
something? So instead of saying like, oh, when my girlfriend came in the other day, she was really angry. It's like that may or may not be true, but but like what was the observable facts?
yeah,
She walked in, she, you know, um breathes really she was like breathing really
yeah,
loudly, just having like those big sighs.
yeah,
She threw her keys onto the key rack or whatever, and then she just like she didn't even look up at me. She didn't say she usually greets me, and today she didn't greet me, and then she just walked into the kitchen without acknowledging me.
mhm,
Right? So like that would be the observable, like that's what happened.
right.
Instead of being like, oh yeah, she just came in and she was angry. Because oftentimes people come into, sessions with us and they say something like, oh, well, then they freaked out. Well, what do you mean? What do you
Yeah.
mean freaked out? Because, like, in one scenario, a freak out could look like, someone melt like if you're watching someone, they get a piece of information and now they're yelling about it. Like
Mhm,
that could be a freak out for someone. Another person could be throwing things. Another person could be having like more of an anxious meltdown where they're kind of what the words that they're saying are like ruminating on things or like future tripping or like catastrophizing things, right? Like what are they actually saying too?
mhm,
And because I'm using the words future tripping, catastrophizing, but that again, that wouldn't hold up in court, right? It's like what are they actually saying? They're saying things like this is never going to work. I knew that this would happen. When we talked about this last year, I thought that we figured it out. I'm so upset that this is happening right now. Like that would be the thing that's like, that's the reality of the situation.
mhm,
So instead of saying like they're freaking out or they're future tripping or they're catastrophizing, it's like, what are they actually doing? What are they actually saying? Like if a video camera were picking it up, what would the video camera see and hear? And so that's also a really great way to number one, be able to establish what reality is, but also number two, to establish what a story is, because everything else outside of that is a story. Them
mhm,
catastrophizing it, that might be a story. Like, are you putting that on them? Are you projecting that on them? Them being angry, that might be a story. Maybe your partner coming home, breathing loudly, throwing the keys, not acknowledging you, walking straight into the kitchen is because they stubbed their toe on the way up the stairs and they need ice like right now, like they're not like they're not mad at you, like they just are like they just
Um,
stubbed their toe, like
totally. Oh my gosh.
but like being able to really like like break down
Yeah.
scenarios and think about things in a little bit more detail and establish for yourself like what's the reality of the situation and what is the story that I'm making up about it is really, really helpful, especially when there's change, because when there is change, there's so much opportunity to make up stories about it. And then we do ourselves a disservice in relationships, because it's like if you now think that your girlfriend is mad at you, that is
Right.
going to give you a different set of beliefs, thoughts, actions about what you're going to do next. Versus if you know, Zoom is giving the thumbs up. Versus if you know that she just stubbed her toe, right?
Mhm.
Then that's going to give you a totally different set of
Right.
beliefs, thoughts, actions, feelings, etc. Right? So like knowing what's actually going on and being able to decipher that is going to take out the drama and make it easier to work with the reality.
Mhm. Turn down the spice.
Turn down the spice a little bit. Save the spiciness for other areas of your life.
Yeah, and it is, I mean, it is one of those things too. It's like, yeah, it's just gonna be different in each situation too, because it's like maybe you had like a shitty day at work, right? And then your
Mhm.
partner who's just stubbed their toe, but you don't know that yet, comes in and you're just like, dude, I don't have the time for like I just had a terrible day. And then now this one's coming in huffing and puffing, like fantastic, right? Um, versus like maybe on a day where you had a great day at work and then you see them come in, you're like, oh man, wonder what's going on because you're a lot more
Right.
like grounded, right? Like, because it's again, it's just like all the nervous system interactions that are going on. And so it's like, yeah, if you're already in a more like dysregulated state, that's going to dysregulate you more. And then
Right.
you're acting, like you said, like you're acting from that space, you're thinking from that space. Like your thoughts are already working with your nervous system around like what could be possibly going on. Like, oh, shoot, did I not do something earlier? Like, or was I supposed to, oh man, was I supposed to pick something up? Oh no, da 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 da, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? Like you start going into that mode too. And then, yeah, and then that's just like how you're both are interacting, right? And then it just can blow up into something else. And especially if there's, say like a change happening that is going to require flexibility and, patience and, just the quote unquote comfort in the unknown, right? Like being in that space of the unknown is that like that usually is what is going to trigger a lot of us for a variety of reasons from the past around the thing of the unknown, right? Like I knew what our relationship looked like pre-change. And now, like, using the example of what you were saying of like, if you guys have to move, far off, or maybe it's going to go long distance for a little bit or whatever it is. Like, it's like, yeah, pre-change, I knew how our relationship worked, but now I don't know what our relationship is going to look like when we move to Minnesota or, or when they move, across the country and now we're in different time zones. And now, like, wait a minute, what is, and then you start to go into, I don't know what that is because it's all unknown. Like you obviously don't know it yet, right? And instead, like to be with the change of being like, okay, yeah, there obviously is a lot to sort out here for sure. And, recognizing like, yeah, this is going to ask us both to be flexible in how we've gone about this relationship compared to when we were here in the same town or, around our families or around our friends. Like, it's all going to be very different, right? And so it's usually that just starts to like propel everyone into, but what does this mean? Because I mean, it's a survival mechanism, right? Like we
Right.
want to create predictability because that's what keeps us safe. It's not like let me just walk into this unknown space like I'm fine. Like no, that's like this is your
Uh,
survival mechanisms working. Huzzah,
yeah.
and recognizing like this isn't like that life.
Congratulations, you're alive.
Yeah, congratulations. You can recognize possible threats. Yes, love that. Right. And it's like, and again, it's not the lion that's waiting for you in this den, right? Like it's like, oh, yes, this is going to be different and like being able to work in that. But, I think I'm trying to think of like different situations with like clients and stuff of like
Mhm.
what is such a block, like I mean obviously there's so many different blocks that come up when it's like,
Yeah.
hey, you need to be flexible. You got to change that up, like if you
Yeah.
want to continue in this relationship, it's going to look different, which means you're going to act differently, they're going to act differently, there's going to be different components of your relationship, some is going to be left, some is going to be added, right? All those things. And it's like I'm just trying to think of like the like the most common block that I see, and it's like I feel like a lot of it has to deal with like grief, which obviously I feel like that
I mean,
makes
grief, I think grief is a natural part of change, and I
yeah,
think that recognizing that grief is, I like, even if it's not something where you quote unquote think, you know, there should be grief,
right,
right? Like grief is just a natural part of change,
yeah,
Like something is the way that things were ending, and the way that things are going to be are unknown, and that brings up grief, for people. But like the way I think about it, like before thinking about like what are the blocks,
yeah, yeah,
like that's this is where I really love being grounded in, because like there's getting grounded in the reality of it, but then there's also getting grounded in who you say that you want to be about it, and also what y'all are committed to. Like what
mm,
you're committed to individually, but also what you're committed to like in the relationship as well. And like, yes, and I'm not saying like who you want to be about it, like, oh, I'm going to be strong about it, and just like forgetting that you have emotions. Like, that's not, that is not what I mean. I repeat, that is not what I mean. I see you, all my
um,
strong
I'm gonna be
people out there.
stoic.
Stoic. Yeah, exactly. That is not what I'm talking about. But rather, what is like, I like to think about it like if you were you 10 years from now and you're looking back on this scenario, what is a way that you could be right now that the you 10 years from now is like, I'm so glad that I was being this way about it. I'm so glad that I chose to be loving. I'm so glad that I chose to be kind. I'm so glad that I was really coming from a place of trust or peace or companionship, or whatever. Like there's a myriad ways that you could be
Mm,
about something: adventurous, courageous, connected, spiritual. Like there's so many ways that you could be about something, but like just the person, if yeah, the person that you are 10 years from now, them looking back on you, what is the way that they're like, oh my God, I'm so glad that you were this way about it? Because
mm,
I bet that the you 10 years from now is not super happy that you were stubborn about it, or super happy that you were closed off, or super happy that you were just trying to muscle through it, right? So like what is a way that you could be about this? And then as you're navigating whatever comes up, just asking yourself the question, if I were being trusting
mm,
about this. Like if I were allowing myself to be trusting, like that scenario where, your partner comes home and they're like in a huff, and it's like taking that moment to let pause and be like, okay, if I were being trusting about this, if I were trusting myself, if I were trusting my partner, if I were just trusting that, this is going to end well, then what would I do right now? And maybe that would elicit you to immediately be curious regardless of whatever mood that you are
right,
in, right?
yeah,
And then the other part is like the commitment that you have together, and the reason that I really love that is because it enables the two of you to, or however many of you are, involved in this situation of change. Maybe you have a polycule of like 6 people. um But, however many people are involved, it allows you all to be on a similar page and have a similar trajectory. Like, if all of you are committed to being on the same team, or all of you are committed to giving each other the benefit of the doubt, all of you are committed to being willing to work through it even when it gets hard, all of you are willing to be honest and open with your communication even when it gets hard, like some like things like that, right? Like if you're all coming from this same drive and trajectory, then these things can be a little bit easier, right? Because you have a place where you can come meet each other back at. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so before we even talk about blocks, like I really like to have these things in place so that you have a more solid foundation to come from with yourself and with each other.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I definitely, because I'm like, every time my like clients bring it up, it's like they go right. I'm like, what is blocking you? Like instantly, like it's like that's what we're before they even get to it. And I'm like, oh, it's the loss or whatever. So it's like that's usually
Mhm.
like how they talk about it, They're like, no,
Right,
it
right,
can't
right.
happen because of this. And I'm like, well, what's if that happens, what then? And then it's like, well, but
Mm.
then I can't have that. And it's like, yeah, for sure. Like,
Right,
and so
right,
it's like we go into it and then it's, going, but it's like, it's funny too, like, because I know you use the like 10 years from now, like version, and I do something completely different for myself. Like, not for, like, that's great. That's a great coaching question all the time.
yeah.
Uh, Solid coaching, but like, I'm like, just in case, people have like different ways of doing it. Like for
Sure.
myself, like when I like, and this isn't even a conscious thought, honestly, like it just like happens so quickly. Like it's just like I honestly like think to like the little kid version of me
Hmm.
of like, oh, because it's like, it's kind of similar in the sense of like, oh, if you think of, people think of like their most authentic self or their,
Yeah,
highest self, whatever, verbiage you want to go with. But
right.
I'm like, the closest thing I have to that is me being a kid, in the
For
sense of
sure.
like, being so genuine and like authentic. Cause, as a little kid, you're just like, I'm doing whatever the heck I want
Right.
because,
I'm
you
just
know,
me. What do you
yeah,
mean?
like you're still pretty like usually untouched by all of the societal pressures. Like as you grow older, then there you go.
Yeah.
But like it has that more purity of it, and so like that's why I think back to like, oh, this little kid version of me, like how would they act? And it's like, oh yeah, they would be very like kind and curious and patient. Like I was a patient little baby. Oh my God. Like, but it's like, oh, then I'm just like, oh yeah, like that's what I'm going forward with, because it's like, I know that, versus, I mean, it's always, it's hard for, that's why I'm saying it because it's like, it's hard for me to go into like
Yeah,
future,
yeah,
future me.
yeah.
Um, Whether it's like, yeah, 1 year from now, 5 years, 10 years, it doesn't matter. I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to speak for them. But but like that's why I bring it in just because like sometimes like yeah, that's like a really helpful, way of doing it, for some folks. And then like for people like me where I'm like, I don't know what that 10-year person from now would be like, yeah, for sure. I'm like, what's the little kid? What would the little kid do? And I'm like, okay, for sure, these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
So
No, I
just
love
another
that.
weird thing about me. So there you go.
Hey, well, and the way that I think about like that's so funny because the way that I think about little kid version of me, like the question that I always or how like yeah, how I think about it is really coming from a place of like would they like if I were being their role model, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
if me now were their role model, what would
yeah.
I do?
Yeah, it's kind of like because I see it as like that, like I follow the extension cord basically, of like that little kid to me now. It's like, oh, if I came from that pure space where I was very kind and curious and patient, all these things,
Hmm.
I'm like, if I followed that up until now, like, in that more mature version of that, right? Like that's how I kind of like so it's like the same thing. It's like I don't see it as like a role model, but I'm like, if we expand upon that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a few decades, what would that little kid have grown up to be? You know, if they followed that trajectory, it's like, oh yeah, like then I would be much more, you know, expansive in my kindness and my gentleness or whatever it is,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I can definitely see that with you. That checks out.
Yeah, no. That's why I feel like I was like, oh, I feel like this will lock some pieces in for you.
It does. That actually, I'm like, wow, that actually that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that is how I work.
Yeah, because you're such a sweet sweetie.
Well, that's I was a sweet little baby. I was a sweet little child, you know,
Yeah.
like
You are. You're just a sweet, sweet, cute, cute. That's what you are.
so that's why I try to follow that line, you know.
I love that. I love that. I'm gonna ponder on that later. I like that train of thought.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah. Thanks. Always learning from you.
Oh,
Yeah, it's true.
that's good. I'm glad I can offer some things.
You offer a lot of things. Oh my goodness. Don't even on this podcast.
Whoa,
Yeah,
whoa.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so yeah, we talked about
Who you're being,
who you're being,
commitment, what you're committed to.
commitments. Yeah, and I use the word commitment, but sometimes, and I know that you like using the word values better,
Mhm.
and I think that some people resonate with the word like values or like shared values
Mhm.
more so than they resonate with commitment. So also just offering that.
Well, that's because people are afraid of commitments. So. No, I mean, I think in the context of relationships, people have so many different ideas of like what commitment is, right? You know,
Yeah.
like, and so when they hear, what are you committed to? They're like,
Yeah,
wait,
it does sound a lot more. I actually don't mean it that seriously.
no, no, for sure. But like, you know, like you know, as in terms of like how we hear about, you know, commitment or committed relationships and all those kinds of things, you
Yeah,
know, like growing up and in media and everything. So I think that word or that concept just will bring in so many different ideas that people are like,
yeah.
what?
No, totally, totally. Yeah, so if commitment doesn't, and I've talked about commitments on this podcast before and like kind of what I mean by it, excuse me, and how I use it as a coaching tool. So if you want to, excuse me, rummage through our past podcast, it is there.
Rummage through.
Rummage through. So
This
change.
old pile of junk behind us, you know, uh, the whatever 90 plus podcast episodes.
Yeah.
Rummage through.
Oh my God. Well, no, but like go what I wanted to say or did you want to talk about blockages actually?
No, no, no. I was just, no, we can, I didn't, I wasn't attached to talking about blockages. I was just thinking about what people talk about in sessions and they go right
No,
into
yeah, for sure.
blockages. So that's all I was
Well,
like,
yeah, well, because that's why I thought of like, the how you're being about it and like what you're committed to or like shared values and stuff because I think there's so many different like we could talk about a lot of different types of blockages that people
yeah,
have.
I mean, because you can also even think about it like if you know, you're like, oh yeah, I want, you know, I want to be curious and kind or whatever. And like, you
Yeah.
know, our shared commitment, our shared value is teamwork, right? It's like even knowing that, you know, and maybe then you're like, but I still can't do it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, what, like, okay, what's coming up even with that, you know, at the top of your mind, right? Or maybe even you use the, you know, your way of being or the commitments, values, whatever, as kind of like a, like the force, you know, where you're like, oh no, I'm just gonna push through this because we're a team, dang it. Like, you know, like
Yeah,
if I
yeah.
say no to this, we're no longer a team, you know, like that kind of thing versus because I think, you know, I mean, yeah, being with like, okay, what's making it hard for me to actually honor this value of teamwork, right? Or actually honor this want to be kind and curious. Like,
Yeah.
you know, just getting curious. But just like being like, yeah, like this is really hard for me to do this. Like, what's going on? And it's
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, maybe the block is like, oh, well, it's hard for me to be, in that space of teamwork because it feels like they're leaving me. Right.
Mm.
Like, and so it's like, well, they're not being a team with me, right? They're abandoning me or whatever it is, right? And so it's like being able to then address that and, address that feeling of or a fear of being left or abandoned, whatever it is, which then would lead you into like, what does our relationship now look like? So that you are not having that feeling of being abandoned. You're still feeling like a team, with them across the country or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing that comes up for me in that too is like recognizing recognizing in yourself like how much of that is your inner work versus again what's actually happening. And I
Right.
think, like for example, what you said like feeling abandoned,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so it's like if you're someone who has an abandonment wound, then I want to have a better way to say this. If you're someone who has an abandonment or just a wound in general,
Yeah.
like that wound is going to get poked regardless of the person that you're with or the
Right.
circumstances of that relationship. And so recognizing that it's from that wound and not from the person and not from the relationship as and again not to like put everything on you,
Mhm.
and it's not that it's not that your partner can't support you through that, but it is to take away any sort of like shame or blame or fault of anyone. So not
Mhm.
trying to blame your partner or blame the relationship or blame the circumstance or blame yourself. Just recognizing like, if there was a root on the ground and you tripped over the root, you wouldn't like there's no blame there. There's no blame, there's no fault there.
Mhm.
There was just a root on the ground that you tripped over. It's not the
Mhm.
tree's fault, it's not the root's fault, it's not your fault. It's not your partner's fault who was, walking in front of you who maybe could have like, given you a heads up, like, whatever. Like it's no one, there's no fault here. Like that's not a part of the conversation. And so if wounds are being poked or brought up, recognizing them as just things that are being brought up and not things that need to be assigned fault or blame,
Mhm.
right?
It was the root's fault.
It was the root's fault. Now I'm just thinking about, but I'm a cheerleader. What's your
Stupid ass root.
stupid ass root? And if you have not watched But I'm a Cheerleader, it's time for you to watch But I'm a Cheerleader. If you're listening to the Queer Love podcast and you haven't watched But I'm a Cheerleader, what are you doing?
Ow.
I know, talk about no blame.
Oh my God. I feel like that movie is just one of those that can be a little bit obscure, So if you're
It's
like, what? Come on, man, you got to give the queer some slack.
yeah. I think that movie's so funny.
It is hilarious. I watched it for the first time as a teenager at like 1 a.m. with my sister because it was an obscure movie that was playing at 1 a.m.
Right.
We were teenagers and we're like, what is this? And it was amazing. So, and then I just kept watching it, as you can tell. We watched it for the first time, for your first time together.
That's right, we did. We did. It was so great. I loved it.
Uh,
We watched it this last week too, because I was like, you know what I want to watch? But I'm a cheerleader.
yeah, it's true.
It was great. Anywho, all right. Change, being flexible, being adaptable. So yeah, I think when it comes to so all of the things that we've talked about so far have been around how you can navigate this like with you and with your partner or partners. And I think part of being flexible and adaptable is having that mindset, like having the mindset of it's okay for things to change, or having even like the mindset of like resourcefulness, because one of the things that you brought up was, some people get blocked around like, well, I just don't know what to do.
Mhm.
And I know this question is like annoying for some people, but I like this question. It's annoying for me too, but it's very helpful. But the question is, well, if you did know what to do,
Oh my God.
then what would you do? I like that. I have a love-hate relationship with that question. But I think that it's a good, it's like, okay, because it does kind of like what I want to induce is a state of creativity, right? Like if you were being creative about this, like if there were seven different ways that you could, like seven different things that you could do here, then what are those seven things? Like taking the case, like because it's taking your mind out of that like no, there isn't a way. Because like if you look at a tree and you're like, I can't climb that tree, then you're not going to think about any way that you could climb that tree.
Mhm.
But if you look at a tree and you're like, I could climb that tree, then how could you do that? Like, what are all the ways that you could do that? Could you take a class to climb a tree? Could you get a rope? Could you go to the store and buy, like wood and nails to like make a ladder? Could you go get a ladder? Like there's so many different ways you could climb a tree. And in some cases with change, you have to climb the tree. You have no option.
Mhm.
So it's like, listen, this is going to happen. So what are the ways in which we can navigate this? Right? And if you have to find a way, then what is a way? What are all of the ways? I also like the exercise of like, listing off all the ways that you could get something done, even if they're absolutely ridiculous,
Yeah.
just to like pull some like absurdity and humor into it too.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, well, I could call Arnold Schwarzenegger's agent and see if Arnold Schwarzenegger is available to like lift me up into this tree, and just like, because sometimes like adding that little silliness and humor is also going to help spark your creativity as well. It's like, oh, well, we could call Oprah and have her recommend a her favorite therapist to us and then get their phone number and call them. That's what we could do in this situation.
Oh my God. I'm like, I'm all for the possibilities. I'm not for that question.
Yeah. But it's like, what are,
So
but
for sure. It is
yeah,
like
but
getting people into the possibility space of
yeah,
like, because I mean it's just, like I'm thinking of a particular client who, for them it was this, not full cross country move, but it was like enough of a cross country move with their partner, and they were leaving their family and all this kind of stuff. And they were like dreading every little bit of it. And it was going to be for like a couple of years and stuff. So it's like, okay, it's temporary, blah, 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 blah. But still, that really sucks. And so, we kind of had to move through like this kind of grief stage to first get into a more regulated state to
right.
where you can then get into possibilities. Because the thing is, like, if you're in survival mode, you're not thinking about what is possible, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like, I don't, that is not safe. You're not like, sitting there with a lion in your face and you're being like, what could be possible to get me out, right? Like you're feeling more of that fear. So it's like allowing, whatever it is to then get you into that possibility space where it's like, for that client, it was like, okay, what, yeah, like we were starting to talk about, what could be some of the benefits, of being in this specific area, or what could be some of the benefits for your relationship. It's like, oh yeah, we're moving somewhere new together. We're going to build a lot of trust, or like, we're going to create new memories, whatever it is, right? Like, because Otherwise, you're going to get stuck in the rumination of these are all the wrong things that are going on versus like being able, and it's not to be like, just invalidate yourself. Everything's going to be fine. No, it's not like the toxic positivity kind of experience. It's more of
Right.
going, yeah, for sure. It can be hard. It might be hard in these other ways that you're actually thinking it's going to be hard in that way, and it actually might be hard in that way. And also, there are so many other things that can happen that you're not even aware of in the sense of like, hey, you go there and you meet your next best friend, or like, or you find this really cool coffee shop that you are just like, oh my God, this is the best place ever, and whatever it is, right?
Right.
It's like all these things that you don't know because yes, it's in the unknown, but you start to think of what else could be possible here because it does allow like that breathing room. And in that breathing room, that's like gonna allow you to be a lot more flexible
Yeah.
around the change because you're not feeling so confined, so constricted by, the weight of it, right? Like you're like, oh, yeah, there are other things here. And when you start to look for other things,
Yeah.
right? Like when you start to, or like at least open to, hey, yeah, like, I'm open to whatever these new friendships and stuff. It's like that's what you'll start to be more on the lookout for, right? Versus like, these are all the ways that's going to ruin my relationship.
Yeah.
Because then you'll start to look for all the ways that it's ruining your relationship, right? Or creating that, like on that subconscious level.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I know exactly. And like that's also what I'm pointing to with like thinking of the possibilities too. It's like whatever you're focusing on is going to expand. And
Yeah.
so yeah, if you're focusing on like this is going to be terrible, this is going to yeah, ruin my relationship, then it's like that's what's going to expand. And like Lee said, this is not to be it's not like toxic positivity. It's not even like trying to bypass your emotions. Like
Yeah.
feel your emotions, feel the grief. Like do not try and bypass how you're feeling or what's coming up for you. And also keeping open the possibilities of things and like what do you want to focus on here, and how can you navigate it with your person,
Mhm.
or people, whatever the case may be, and doing it in a way that is um, connecting,
Mhm.
because even in things that are hard, and oftentimes, especially when things are hard, that is when relationships become more connected because you are navigating through something challenging together. So
Mhm.
this is also an opportunity for the growth of your relationship as well. So making sure that, yeah, you're not doing this on your own, that you are doing it with the other person, and that this is an open dialogue between the two of you about, or more of you, who about how you want to do this together. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to say? I feel like we
Um,
covered a lot.
yeah, that's all I was just trying to. Yeah, I mean, I'm like, I think we covered a lot.
We
We
did.
gave the people a lot to chew on.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I think this whole topic is obviously very
I mean, we
large.
could, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could, yeah. I feel like, well, I said that about like the healthy relationships episode too, because I
Yeah,
was just like,
yeah,
oh my God, like every single thing that we talked about here, we could create a whole nother series about.
yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I think it's also just like, I mean, the thing that comes up for me is like, it's just worth saying like when, you know, navigating change in relationships, like whether it is these large or small things, like it is a very great relational skill to have. It's a great life skill to have. But, it really is, for your own experience, right? Like whether this relationship, that you're experiencing a change in continues or not, like this is this is always going to happen is like the change aspect of it and the ability to kind of readjust, pivot, think about new things, and then recognize like, oh yeah, that actually doesn't work for me, right? Or it doesn't work for the other person, or it doesn't work for us together. And it's like it's not a bad negative thing or whatever it is, right? But it's like that ability to discern that in the process of change when there is so many unknown factors and variables at play is such a great skill to have because it's like you really are, it does take a lot to kind of have that understanding of yourself, the other person having, understanding of themselves and how you go together and don't or whatever it is, right? Like it's like having that ability to do that so that you're not no one's sacrificing, no one's like, just abandoning themselves in the process or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, hey, yeah, no, like that skill is going to have you get a lot more like freedom in your life in general, like in the sense of like I feel free to be able to, yeah, change comes up and I can still like be there for myself, they can do that for themselves, and all that kind of stuff while we're also doing it together. I think it's just like that's just something that like as time goes by, it's like if you can just keep like harnessing that skill, oh
Mhm.
my God. Like I'm like that like is such a freeing thing for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing that I want to say about navigating change in relationships is also recognizing the novelty of the situation as well. Because sometimes, like, if it's a newer relationship and maybe this is like the first big challenge of the
Mhm.
relationship, giving yourself a lot of compassion and grace, because not only are you learning how to navigate change with this person, you're also learning how this person navigates change.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, so because and they're learning how you navigate change
Mhm.
too.
Right.
And so there's a lot of newness, and which leads to a lot of can lead to a lot of breakdowns in expectations as
Mhm.
well. Because usually this happens either like during or right after the honeymoon phase of the relationship, NRE phase of the relationship. And you had all of these ideas about how great this person is and how whenever if we ever have a conflict, we're never gonna be like XYZ, blah 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 blah. Or they
I
would
could be
never,
like my
well,
mom.
yeah, or they would never do this, or I would never do this, or all of that, like all of those kind of like expectations that you might have. And so there's also the possibility that a lot of those expectations get tarnished. And so that's also a really challenging thing about change as well, is like having expectations of how you thought they were going to be, or how you were going to be, or how you were going to navigate it together. And that's also really challenging too. And even if this isn't the first time that you have navigated a change with this person, each change brings its own level of newness to
Mhm.
it. It's like, oh, well, we've never had to move because of your job. We've never had kids before. We've never, traveled to this part of the country. We've never navigated whatever it is. Like, there is a level of newness to it. And so you're also, again, giving yourself that grace and compassion for navigating something challenging that you've never had to really navigate before, or never had to navigate before in this way, right?
Mhm.
So be nice to yourself too. Be kind.
Just be kind in general.
Be kind. Just be kind. All right. Do you want to complete there? Complete. All right. We love you. We love you very much.
Love
We're
you.
sending you lots of love. If you want help navigating a challenging part of your relationship, or if you're going through something right now, this is what Lee and I do for a living. So
Bring it to us.
please reach out. We would love to help you with what you're dealing with, and we would love to work with you on it. So please reach out. Just click on the link below, and we'll set up a time for us to chat.
Do it.
All right, lots of love.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Queer Love Podcast. We would love to hear from you. Drop us a line on TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter at Queer Love Relationships, or email us at queerloverelationships@gmail.com.
If you are interested in working with us, follow the Linktree link in the show notes, See if our offers resonate with you. And if they do, sign up with us or book a discovery session.
We are so grateful that you're here, listening, learning, and growing with us.
Until next time, keep loving.